Good afternoon, everyone. And for those who it's morning, good morning, depending on where you are. Thank you for joining us for this webinar where we seek to share information
التي سنشارك فيها معلومات
concept notes.
حول
Before we start, we'll have a few housekeeping details and then I'll hand it over to Morag, who is going to kick us off. So, Becky, do you want to tell us how the setup is?
Thanks, Anne. Yeah, just to inform everyone before we properly start the webinar that there is live interpretation into Arabic throughout the course of this webinar. If you would like to access it, please see along the bottom of your Zoom screen, there should be an option for interpretation. If you can't see it, you might have to click the More button, which is the 3 little dots. Select the interpretation button, and then you should be able to click on Arabic, and you will hear the simultaneous interpretation into Arabic from our interpreters. There is also a chat function if you'd like to add any questions in the chat as we go. We have people who should be able to answer them as we're going along. Thanks, Anne, back to you.
Thank you. And just to say that at the end of the presentation, we'll be able to take questions. So if you have any, you can either put it in the chat or the Q&A button, and we will get back to you as we continue with the webinar and also at the end. Morag, I want to hand it over to you.
Thank you very much, Anne. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining the regional launch of the What Works Innovation Grants. My name is Morag Patrick. I'm a Senior Social Development Advisor with the UK's Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office, which has funded the What Works Consortium for many years. The What Works team have kindly organised this event today to tell us more about the purpose of the What Works Consortium and how to apply for a grant. But before they do, I'd like to say a few words about why the UK has been such a strong supporter of What Works for many years. And I'll share with you just 3 reasons. The first reason is the scale of the problem. Violence against women and girls is a global crisis. No country in the world is immune, including the UK. The second reason is the impacts of violence against women and girls. A life free of violence and discrimination is the human right of every woman and girl. And when that right is violated, it impacts the individuals directly affected, and it impacts indirectly on wider communities and societies. Gender equality is not a nice to have for economic prosperity, climate resilience, and stability. It's vital for those things. And then the third reason is violence against women and girls is preventable. What Works projects that have been funded in the past have reduced violence by as much as 50% in 2 to 3 years. With sustained investment, we can prevent violence. One of the challenges that we have is that we lack rigorous evidence of what works to prevent violence in Middle East and North Africa, by which I mean we lack good evidence of what works to stop violence against women and girls before it starts by addressing some of the risk factors in homes and in communities. This is a challenge that women's rights organisations are uniquely placed to help us address. And we aim to support you by giving grant applications from women's rights organisations in Middle East and North Africa priority in this grant round. I strongly encourage you to apply for a What Works grant if this aligns with your own goals. And with that, I'd like to hand over to Anne. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Morag. I see in the chat before I start some people saying they can't hear anything and they're wondering whether we have started. So I don't know whether, Becky, we're able to tell whether the participants can hear us. Otherwise, we'll be speaking to ourselves. I'm not sure how we check that.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. It looks like most can hear. So anyone that's having problems with their audio, please perhaps try leaving and rejoining. It sounds like that might be some isolated problems, but not for the majority. So I'm sorry about that. But if you try leaving and rejoining and see if that makes it any better.
All right. Thank you then. Thanks, Becky. So yeah, thank you once again for spending this time with us for us to share with you about the program. We do have a presentation, and I will make this presentation with my colleague. I have colleagues on the call. I'll ask them to quickly introduce themselves before I get to the presentation. My name is Anne Gadhombe, and I lead the implementation consortium of the WAWG program. I'll ask colleagues who are here, Sinead, Becky, to introduce themselves. And I see Claudia and Teresa too.
Thanks, Anne. Hello, everyone. My name is Sinead Rowan. My role on the What Works programme is Deputy Programme Director, and I'm joining this webinar from London today for the IRC. Delighted to be here with you all. I will pass to my colleague, Becky, please.
Thanks, Sinead. Hello, everyone. I'm Becky. I'm the Programme Coordinator for the What Works programme, and I'm also based in the UK. I'll pass over to Teresa.
Hi, everyone. My name is Teresa Nunes. I'm a Senior Operations Manager for the What Works 2 program, and I'm also based at IRC just outside London in the UK. I'll pass to Petra New. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi everyone, my name is Petra Neal and I work with IRC and I'm a Senior Technical Advisor and I'm based in Lebanon. Over to Dima.
Good morning everyone, good afternoon. My name is Dima Hamdan. I'm working with the Capacity of Monitoring and Evaluation and I'm based in Management. I'm not sure who's still in the team, but
all right. Okay, then let's go on. And I just, so that people know that we have colleagues here. So some from the region, some outside of the region, and we'll be here to answer all your questions. So I will get started and I will introduce the consortium. As we say, the What Works is a 7-year initiative funded by FCDO, and the main aim is to contribute to prevention and elimination of violence against women and girls. And it brings together a large consortium of people, two large consortia, one of which is led by International Rescue Committee, where I and the colleagues who introduced themselves are based. We have CARE International UK, Social Development Direct, Raising Voices, and Breakthrough, which are two feminist Global South organizations that work on violence prevention. We have a research consortium that is led by the Global Women's Institute at George Washington University, and a number of other universities like Johns Hopkins, Aga Khan University, University of Cape Town, Kenyatta University. And basically how we work is that we fund interventions and identify and fund interventions on innovation and scale up of violence prevention. And our partners in the research consortium then basically do the evaluation of those interventions to ensure that they are contributing to the evidence generation. So it's a multi-stakeholder approach to scaling violence prevention approaches. Next slide, Dima. So therefore, why this intervention? And as Morag said, We have been able to establish in previous iteration of What Works program that violence against women and girls is preventable. And in some of the projects that were funded in the past by What Works, we were able to actually demonstrate that violence is preventable by up to 50%. And this was through sort of rigorous evaluation of the interventions that were funded. And then we also know that prevention is much more impactful and more cost effective than just response. And so there is a lot of initiatives and efforts to respond to violence, but they don't tackle the root causes. So the approach we take is we want to combine both prevention and response, as both would deliver more and better results. And then we have the third reason we are doing this is because we know, based on this evidence we generated in the past, that violence is preventable. Those are small scale interventions and they are time bound. And then when they were designed, they weren't designed with scale in mind. So what we are seeking to do as this program is we innovate, we support those innovations, we test them, and then we also fund them to go to scale. Next slide, Dima. So how do we define violence as a program? We look at violence at 3 levels. We look at violence at the primary prevention level. And this is where we are looking at stopping violence even before it happens. And this is done through some of the examples that this can be achieved is through social norm change at community level, school-based approaches where you work with young people to shift their own attitudes and understanding of violence, parenting interventions so that then parents have the tools and skill set to be able to prevent violence in a much better way. Then the other way we look at violence is secondary prevention. And this is aiming to reduce the frequency and severity of new episodes of violence where it has previously occurred. So if someone has gone through violence, how do we make sure there's no repeat violence? And some of the examples here is how working with health workers to be able to screen and make referrals, working with high-risk groups, that people we know that are likely to encounter violence, programs that sort of prevent people who are predisposed to episodes of violence from being violent, like alcohol prevention programs. And then the third way in which we define prevention is through tertiary prevention. And this is where we aim to respond to the immediate needs of survivors, so that we acknowledge that violence has happened, we need to stop its recurrence, but we also need to support survivors. And this is through shelters, through hotlines, through working with the police, through providing people with other kinds of services that they can then use and be safer from violence. Next slide. So then, so what then are innovation grants? Because this call really that we have issued, and it actually went live on Friday, is a call for innovation grants. And we have 3 types of grants as a program. We have innovation, we have scale, and under scale, we have different iterations. But for purposes of this webinar, we are talking about innovation grants, and we define these as the development and implementation of new or existing ideas with the transformative ability to contribute to impact with potential for future scaling. And so this particular call that we issued on Friday, it's actually live, is for people to bring their ideas. It could be a new idea, it could be an existing idea, and you think that it has capacity and ability to contribute to impact, and that if you implement it, you'll be able to prevent violence. And therefore, we are looking to get those concept notes. And once we get those concept notes, then we will review them and be able to support the ones that fit the criteria. So what are we going to be funding then in this innovation? So we are looking at funding interventions that seek to prevent violence in fragile and conflict-affected settings, and especially countries that are experiencing protracted crisis. Particularly for MENA, we know there has been some protracted crises going on. We know right now it's a situation that is escalating. And so we are looking at a focus on protracted crises, and that's why we thought we would also do this webinar that is specifically focused on MENA. The other kind of innovation we are looking to support is technology-facilitated gender-based violence, what is called TFGBV. It's sort of an emerging area of work, new forms of violence because of the internet explosion. And so we are looking at being able to support interventions that can prevent violence that's happening in online spaces. And then the third thing that we will fund is addressing violence prevention in climate change. And basically, there is this out of the recognition of the nexus between the impact of climate change and basically the risks that predisposes women and girls to when they find themselves having to deal with the climate crisis, whether it's flooding, whether it's displacement, whether it's drought, whether the various ways in which climate change presents itself does pose certain risks to women and girls and predisposes them to GBV. So that's another area. And then on top of that, we have a commitment to inclusion and to disability. And so we also are looking to fund and support organizations led by women with disabilities that are working on violence prevention against women and girls with disabilities. I want to hand it over now to my colleague, Sinead, who will take us through the eligibility criteria and the other aspects of this call. Over to you, Sinead.
Thank you, Anne. So who can apply for these grants? We have a lot of text on these slides, but we really wanted to share this with you and also allow for questions later, as Anne has said. But we really want to ensure that these are clear. And I'd love to highlight the first point, which demonstrates the commitment, as Morag has shared with us at the start, of FCDO's investment in violence against women and girls. And our first eligibility criteria in order to apply for these grants we are looking for local level women-led women's rights organisation, all in the Global South, in the 3 priority regions, which we'll come to. And as a women's rights organisation, you can apply on your own, singularly, or you may choose to apply with other partners that you would apply in consortia. Those other organisations could be NGOs, they could be CBOs, they could be other actors. If your idea that you're applying with is on technology-facilitated gender-based violence, then the criteria is slightly different. And we recognise that in terms of as a thematic emerging area, there may be other actors that would benefit from partnering with women's rights organisations on prevention of violence. And so in that case, technology sector organisations or digital rights organisations are also eligible to apply with local level women's rights organisations for technology facilitated gender-based violence. Otherwise, the FCDO innovation grants prioritise funding women's rights organisations in the lead. In terms of the definition for what works for women's rights organisations, we look to them as being organisations that have a deliberate mandate to protect and promote the rights of women and girls, organisations that have majority women at all levels, including across the board and decision making, and also organisations that centre women and girls in all their diversities. So other eligibility criteria we're looking for is that organisations have and can demonstrate their core work in violence prevention or women's rights or gender equality, conflict, and also digital technology sectors. Again, that's specifically for the technology facilitated gender-based violence. So it's not required for all applicants. In terms of geographies, as Anne has outlined earlier, applicants do need to be located within 3 regions, very large regions. The MENA region, and I would like to highlight that is our priority. So innovation grants for Window 2, priority will be given to applicants from your region. Other applicants from Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa can apply, but to be clear, the priority goes to the MENA region. Some other aspects of eligibility criteria include UN organisations are not eligible for funding. Funding organisations, so a women's fund, for example, also not eligible. And an organisation can only apply for 1 application in this round. So you can't be on 2 or 3 applications. You can apply 1. Next slide, please, Dima. So as Anne outlined, we're looking for concept notes at this stage. It's a 2-stage process. So as you may have seen already, or if not, you will see, we are looking for short concept notes with questions that we're looking for you to answer. As Anne said, we're looking for your ideas. These are innovation grants. So in those concept notes, we're really looking for questions and your answers around how is your innovation innovative, your idea innovative for the field of VAWG prevention or for the region that you're applying from, the region, or in terms of the strategy of how you're applying those factors, or all of those. So very open, we're not prescriptive with the information. We really want to hear your ideas across those 3 thematic areas outlined before. So we're specifically looking for concept notes that demonstrate locally led solutions. What are you going to do in your area in the MENA region? We're looking for ideally a potential to go beyond the pathway to scaling up by reaching other populations. We are also looking for you to have some level of experience in the field, and also having a learning approach, because these are innovations and we're looking to learn from you and learn from your ideas. The intervention also should address gender inequalities, should remove structural barriers such as unequal gender roles. Another aspect that's quite important is we would be assisting the organisations with the ability to manage these funds, because they are UK aid, and also the capability to deliver that intervention. Can everybody hear me? I can just see some questions in the chat.
Yes, we can.
You can? Okay, thank you, Petronine. And then finally, a very, very important question in terms of the selection criteria and what we're looking for when we're reading your concept notes is around your research question, or what you're looking to learn by your idea, your innovative idea. And that's where we will be with our partners from the research consortium. We'll be conducting evaluations on all of the grants that we're working with. So we'd really like to see, what is the research question, what's the learning question that the field of violence against women and girls is facing, that your idea and your project aims to answer. So what's the evidence that would be generated? So that's what we're looking for. Next slide, please, Dima. And then finally, we are also, in terms of the technology facilitated gender-based violence, one of the 3 thematic areas we're hoping to receive applications in. We're also looking at testing technology and digital solutions. That's not necessarily limited to just the technology facilitated gender-based violence applications. You can bring in testing of other digital ways in the other areas, so with climate change or, in conflict affected settings. So the sort of technology, digital solutions is something that we're quite keen to hear ideas upon. And then finally, in terms of the types of violence that this funding opportunity is focused on, the primary focus is intimate partner violence. Also, non-partner sexual violence, including sexual exploitation, abuse and harassment in conflict and emergency settings. And finally, the other type of violence is technology-facilitated gender-based violence. All of that said, we do have secondary outcomes as well. And we are also encouraging proposals and ideas that are seeking to address the intersection of violence against women and violence against children. And in terms of the settings that those interventions might take place, we're looking at violence in and around schools, in and around workplaces and public settings. Next slide, please, Dima. Okay, so other information about these innovation grants that the window is open for is in terms of the geographical scope. So just to reiterate and to be really clear, we are welcoming up applications from all of the regions that FCDO is funded, but we really will prioritise applications from the MENA region. In terms of specific locations, as Anne outlined earlier, we aren't able to fund in acute crisis. So it's more in terms of protracted crisis. If your intervention that you're looking to apply for a grant on is located in fragile and conflict affected states. So protracted crisis only in terms of the eligibility. And then in terms of the funding, so the grants are in the amount of £500,000, so GBP, and the grant duration up to 3 years. And then finally, to kind of reiterate again the fact that these grants will all have an evaluation component, which is very exciting, but is also very robust. So we would really like to emphasize that applicants do need to be willing and interested in being part of a project that has a rigorous evaluation attached to it, and also to reassure you that the 500,000 that the grants are available for is for the intervention. There's separate funding for the evaluation, so you don't need to include any costs for evaluation in the application. There is a very simple budget at this stage that we ask for to accompany the concept notes. And next slide, please, Dima. And so in terms of that process for the concept note, as we've said, it's 2-stage. So right now it's concept note only. So that's a series of questions for you to answer. And then we also ask for a very simplified budget just to indicate what you would do with the funding of 500,000 and the activities that you would propose doing. As Anne said, the grant window is now open on our website. Here's all of the information here on the slides. We will be sharing the English slides as well, because I see some people have asked for those. But right now, as of the 11th of October, the window is open for 8 weeks. We will be looking to receive completed concept notes by the 6th of December or before, if you're ready and willing. And all of our information can be found either on the website or on our socials, or you're very welcome to email us directly on the whatworks2.info@rescue.org, which we are monitoring. And now we have time for all of your questions. So back to you, I think, Anne.
Thank you so much, Sinead, for that presentation. There's a lot of questions, and I've been trying to answer the ones in the Q&A, and I would want to open it up for questions. And I don't know, I think we should probably start first by responding to the ones that have already been asked, and then we can then take some more questions. Does that sound okay? Right, so Becky, are you able to read the questions for us?
Hi, Anne. Yeah, do you want me to read the questions in the Q&A?
Yes, and then, yeah.
So the first question I've got is, do you prioritize or prefer collaborative applications? Would it be a stronger application if the project had 2 or more organizational partners than a single NGO? And the second part of that question is, can we define Global South? What we mean by that?
Okay, thank you, Mary, for that question. We have no preference for either single or joint applications. If you think you want to apply as a collaborative, if you want to partner with another organization, or if an organization wants to apply alone, that is totally fine with us. We have no preference. However, the only thing I would say that if you do want to apply in a partnership, the grant amount is 500,000. It's good that you also be realistic in terms of how much can you be able to do and achieve, and how many organizations can you then bring together in a collaboration. So that then the delivery, when we are looking at the delivery chain map, how you're gonna be delivering, which are the roles and responsibilities, then we'll be able to see whether that's realistic. I see the next question. Arab Network for Feminist CSOs. Is this call open to funding networks? Given that one of our working groups is focused on combating VAWG. Again, that is a discussion that you would need to have amongst yourselves. If you want a working group that works on violence against women and girls to apply, I think that would be the better choice, because in the application form, when you go to the website, you'll be able to see we are asking for a track record. Have you worked on violence against women and girls in the past? Do you have experience? Can you demonstrate and show evidence of that? So it would be possible to apply, but maybe focusing on the groups that have that track record on violence against women and girls and have done previous work there. Sinead, do you want to take the next one? Can other local NGOs apply if the focus is on protection in general?
Yes, thanks, Anne. So other organisations can apply, but we are looking for women's rights organisations to be in the lead. So a women's organisation come together with an INGO or 2 NGOs or 1 NGO. But women's rights organisations are intended to be the lead. And by the lead, what we mean is they would sign the grant. They would be the lead partner within that project's consortia. I was just typing an answer to one of them, a question in the chat around funding amount. Is the amount of the funds 500,000 for one project, or the fund for all the projects? And that 500,000 is for 1 innovation grant.
I also see a question from Mina Rosa. Is a regional network of women living with HIV. We are not registered, but we work under a fiscal host in Lebanon. Are we eligible to apply? Again, yes, you are eligible to apply as long as you are women-led, and majority of you are women, as Sinead shared. And yes, if you're not registered but you have a fiscal host, that is also a possibility that we need to know who is going to receive the funds on your behalf. So if you have a fiscal host that has supported you in the past, that has received funding on your behalf in the past, then that should be fine. Our networks eligible to apply, we're a group of women NGOs and feminists from MENA region, shape a network since 2020. Are we eligible to apply? With notice that we have internal policies and procedures but not registered. Again, as a network, you need to decide whether you want to apply. You have to appoint someone who is in the lead. So I'm assuming if you're a network of organizations, some of you may be registered and you can decide whether you want to pick one of your members to be the lead applicant for purposes of receiving the funding. So again, you can apply if you want to apply as a network, as long as you can appoint one of you organization members that are registered to apply. And on the question of registration, because I think there was another one, I think we also do have a question in the template that asks whether you're registered, and if not, why. We recognize that there are contexts that sometimes it's hard for civil society to register, so we would be open to having a discussion with you if for reasons of probably civic space or state sort of regulations, you've not been able to register, or some populations are criminalized in some contexts, and so it's hard to register. So for instance, LGBTQ organizations might not be able to register in certain places because of criminalization. So we are open to exploring that, and how you answer that question in the template then enables us to be able to have that conversation with you. Sinead, do you want to come in on the Turkey one, local NGO based in Turkey?
I can. There's another one around direct services, around funded direct services. Just to confirm that the funding is not for direct services such as legal and filing lawsuits. It's for prevention activities. So to be clear that direct services and response, it's not something the funding is able to do. I can't quite see the Turkey one, but there's lots in the Q&A.
Yeah. So they are saying that they work in a local. We work in a local NGO. We are based in Turkey, and we work for NWS.
Northwest Syria.
Syria, yeah. Our main focus on protection on general is on general protection, and also work on GBV. Can we apply? And the answer is yes. If you want to work on GBV prevention on the continuum that I laid out, because we look at prevention from the continuum of prevention from primary to secondary to tertiary prevention. Within that continuum, you can apply to for a grant to do work in Northwest Syria. There's a question on Lebanon, whether it is still eligible for the grant, given the extreme escalation in conflict in the past few weeks. And as we shared in the eligibility, it's a question of wait and see. We don't know whether the hostilities are going to cease, whether the escalation, whether the situation is going to de-escalate. It's a tough one, this one, to say yes or no, because we don't know how things are going to evolve. But we are not going to be able to give funding in active crises where there's active conflict, but rather, as we shared, it will be in, we are able to support in protracted crisis situations. So sorry, I'm not giving you a straight answer. It's a tough situation. We acknowledge we don't know how it's going to unfold the next few weeks. It could be that it de-escalates. and therefore then you're eligible, or if it continues to escalate, then it's going to be difficult to be able to provide the support. And then there's a question from Farah. Can you see it, Sinead?
In the chat or in the Q&A?
In the Q&A.
In the Q&A. I can't right now.
Thank you. And just to make sure, it's not an organization, it's an initiative. Could Farah, could you come in and explain what you mean by that? Because it's not clear what the ask is.
Hello, could you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, we are in an initiative, okay, small initiative in Egypt, and we're not registered. We're not an organization. So my question is, are we eligible for like the grant or to apply for the grant or not? It's an initiative focuses on violence against women. Yeah.
Okay, Sinead, do you want to come in?
So if you're an initiative, do you mean you're like a coalition of multiple organizations?
No. We're just like a group of women working together. Okay, we don't have like a premises, or we don't have like only working on online, like online posts online, and like we don't have like placed or a registration fees. We are only an initiative. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, maybe if you email us directly on that, and we will double check for you, because in that instance, if you're not registered, organizations do need to be registered. We do need to have somewhere where we can essentially assign the grant to and disperse the funds to. But we could potentially look into a fiscal agent. So if you email us, Farah, and then we'll look at that. Because we're aware that although FCDO funding does need registration and other requirements, we're also aware that there are very good reasons and barriers why organisations sometimes can't have that. So we'll look at that one directly. We'll take that offline.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay.
I see another question by Bernie asking about anti-terror. Teresa, are you here? Do you want to answer this one, Teresa?
Hi, I'm sorry, I was busy typing in answers on the Q&A. The anti-terror clause, yes, you will need to do that, not at this stage, but at the second stage, if you are selected for the full proposal, there will be a number of checks that we need to carry out, including the anti-terrorism checks. As Anne said, regarding the situation in Lebanon, that same applies to Palestine. We don't have a definite answer for that. Please do contact us for further discussion on that, if that's okay. And I'll pop in the email address that you can use to ask us any further questions. And also, I'm not entirely sure if you will be able to access the templates. And again, please do contact us for that if you're unable to register and access the concept note templates. Thank you.
And I think there are 5 hands raised. I can't see them. I understand there are. I know we've got lots of live questions, but I don't know if we want to go to another.
I think we can go to the hands up and then come back to the chat. I see Nola, and then I see Laura, and I see, in that order, Nola, go ahead. Noha, go ahead. And there's a name I can't say in Arabic. I can't read.
Diana. Diana is the Arabic name.
Nola, are you there? Noha, sorry. Noha Ali. If Noha is not there, who's the other one?
No, I think Noha is gone.
صباحكم يا رب.
No, he's gone. I don't see the other hands that are up.
There's
anymore.
Diana and there's Isra.
Okay. Please unmute yourself and come on. Okay.
ديانا العلي شمال غرب سوريا مديرة منظمة سوريانا.
Diana Al-Ali, I'm not sure if you're getting the translation, but Diana, she's saying she works in the northeast. Diana, northeast أو northwest قلتي لي؟ بالشمال؟
تأسست منظمة سوريانا 2018. نحن
ديانا
نعمل
تسمعيني؟
على العنف
ديانا
القائم على النوع الاجتماعي.
عفوا
نعم.
ديانا عفوا عم تسمعيني؟
نعم سامعتك.
اوكي، فيك تقولي لي شو السؤال تبعولك؟
تمام. هل بسنة 2025 هل ممكن تمويل منظمات تقودها نساء في شمال غرب سوريا؟
اوكي، خليني ترجم السؤال وبرجع لك. اوكي.
So Petronil, should we go to the next person?
I can ask you, she asked the question. She's asking if it's possible to fund organizations that are led by women in 2025 in the northwest of Syria. That was her question.
Yes, it is possible.
ديانا ايه هيدا الشيء متاح. شكرا.
طيب نحن كيف ممكن نعرف هي المنح او ممكن يشاركوها على الايميلات؟
هيدا الشيء اوكي رح جاوبك. هيدا الشيء موجود على الويب سايت وحطيناه بالتشات اوريدي، رح نرجع نشاركه معكم عن جديد. اوكي، يعني كل المعلومات موجوده على الويب سايت، في لينك حطيناه بالتشات فيك تفوت عليه وكله بالعربي كمان موجود. I just answered. Okay. I just answered Diana that everything related to the application is accessible on the website, and we just pasted several times the link in this chat, so it's accessible. And I said that all the guidance is also available in Arabic on the website. Yes. So we can maybe now take إسراء. Merci Diana. شكرا ديانا. رح ناخد إسراء هلا. إسراء, go ahead.
مرحبا يعطيكم العافية.
رح تحكي بالعربي أو بالإنجليش؟ إسراء. إسراء شو السؤال؟
السؤال إنه هن سؤالين. السؤال الأول لمتى مفتوح الوقت نبقى إذا كان في اعترضنا سؤال ونحن نكتب بالمنحة. والسؤال الثاني
لأي متى مفتوح الوقت لتسألي أسئلة عن هالمنحة؟
إذا كان اعترضنا أي سؤال. والسؤال الثاني إنه لو قدمنا مع منظمة محلية أو دولية في مثلا بالعراق لنشتغل على الشيء، لازم واحدة من يعني يا إحنا يا هم يكون الليد ولا اثنين نقدر نكون مشاركين بالمنحة.
أوكي، رح أسأل أسئلتك بالإنجليزي ورح نرجع لك. أوكي.
تمام.
Isra had two questions. The first question was related to the time frame and for how long she can ask the questions in relation to the innovation grant. So how many weeks? Is there a possibility? So what's the possibility to ask all the questions in relation to the innovation grant, and how long? So this is her first question. The second one, she was asking if they wanted to partner with another organization, a local organization or an international organization. Will they be co-leads or one of these organizations will lead? These were her questions. So in relation to the first one, I think we have 8 weeks window for the questions. And then the second one, it's really up to them to co-lead or for one of them to lead, right? Or we have to have one to lead.
Yes. So she can send us as questions throughout, but as long as the application is in by the 6th of December. So in between, they can send us many questions. Oh,
okay.
Sorry, the interpreters are here. Sorry. Yeah,
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. So Morag, and then we go to Noor, and then we go to Mary Justin.
Thank you, Anne. I wanted to come back and ask if you could clarify this question around the eligibility of specific geographic locations. So my question is, am I right in thinking that you are not ruling out entire countries like Lebanon? You're not ruling out entire regions like Northwest Syria, but you will make a decision on a case-by-case basis about the suitability of specific locations, and that a key consideration in deciding suitability will be that the location must not be an active conflict, and that the location must not be, populations must not be at risk of high risk of displacement, which would make an evaluation almost impossible if populations are being displaced. I just wanted to clarify that if I've understood that correctly, or you can correct me, please.
Thank you, Morag, and you are actually spot on. So we had a lot of debate about this, and we totally understand that when people are in crisis, when there's an active conflict, people do need services more than ever. But we also acknowledge that because there is an evaluation component to these interventions that we'll be funding, then when there is an active conflict, it becomes really hard because people get to move, there's displacement, and so it's almost impossible then to prove whether an intervention is effective. And that is why we settled on protracted crisis. So we aren't ruling out any interventions, for instance, in Lebanon right now. And once they come in, then we'll be able to sort of evaluate based on what is happening at that particular point in time, where the intervention is going to be implemented, and what's the context within that region at that particular point. So, and again, these grants will be most likely awarded. They will be awarded next year, not most likely. So we are looking at awarding that. When we look at the timelines, we get the concept notes, then we review them, then early in next year, then people get to develop the full applications. So from mid next year, anything could have happened. Things could have de-escalated and stabilized, or it could be that things have escalated. And so we aren't ruling out those applications. Yeah. No. Metowali? Is no here? Can they have their hand up? Okay. Then shall we go to Mary Justin then?
Hi, this is Mary.
Yes, Mary, go ahead.
Great. First of all, thank you very much for making this grant available and for also doing this information session. I really appreciate it. I just want to clarify about eligibility. My organization that's based in Bahrain, we indeed provide GBV response services, and we also work in conflict zones, specifically Sudan and Palestine. But I just want to confirm that assuming our grant application focuses exclusively on prevention services in non-conflict zones or in protracted crisis areas, we would not be excluded from consideration simply because in parallel, we do activities that are not eligible for this grant, while they would not be written into this grant though.
Should I?
I'm not. Yes, go ahead. Did you?
Yeah, I think you would be eligible because you are, in terms of what you would be applying to do, your idea would be in region and working on topics that are eligible.
Right.
So
So the 500,000 would be preventive work in eligible areas, and then in parallel and connected to this grant, we do response and acute crisis.
Absolutely,
So,
that's absolutely fine.
And just to confirm, we're based in the GCC. We're based in Bahrain, which is not a low-income country, but we operate throughout the MENA region in low-income, what would be considered global south. So that's not an excluding criteria in that case.
No, no, that you would still be eligible as long as you can demonstrate that all of the funding and the intervention will be implemented in.
Sure.
Yes, so that's
our staff are based in Bahrain, but the services are in Egypt, they're in Sudan, they're in, Lebanon, et cetera.
Understood. Yeah.
Perfect.
We will look at that very closely on the application, but the simple answer is that is okay because we understand why you might do that for security and so on.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much for your time and energy. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And I see Morag also has clarified that Bahrain is not an FCDO eligible country, but as if the activities are in a different location, then that is eligible, that would be fine.
That's what we need. Yeah, and that's exactly what we need to look at, the kind of finer details of it. But as a broad rule, we do understand that some organisations implement and flow the funding in to the countries where the implementation will occur. Yeah.
So if Bahrain is not eligible, it's safe to assume that all 5 GCC countries are not eligible.
That's correct, Mary. This is Morag from FCDO. Yes, so none of the Gulf countries are ODA eligible.
Perfect.
But I think Sinead's point is, that doesn't automatically rule you out if the services are being delivered in a location that is eligible.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Understood.
Thank you. Is Noor Metwali back?
I think her microphone is working and she's on the chat.
Okay. All right. Shall we go back then to the Q&A? I saw someone asking about INGO eligibility. As we said, could you please advise regarding the eligibility of an INGO to apply? For the innovation grants, the lead applicant is local women's rights organizations, and they can choose to partner with an INGO if they have agreed on the role of that INGO. But the lead would be local women's rights organization, and that's Maged. So, should we go back to the Q&A, or do we have other questions? People who want to? I can't see the full screen. I see some parts of it.
There are questions on how many applications we will support, Anne.
Okay. So for this round of applications of concept notes, we are seeking about 6 applications for the innovation grants. And each of those is £500,000. In the past, we have taken a flexible approach, but the minimum amount is 500,000. And so, yeah, that's the number we are looking to award. Can you select? Okay, I'm trying to read and it's moving quickly.
There are also some questions where people are confused about registration. So if they're not registered, does it have to be the lead applicant on a consortium who is registered? Or how would they deal with that?
Yes, so we will require registration, as you will find out in the template when you go to read the materials, the template for application. And so we will require the lead applicant at least to have registration. If they don't have registration for one reason or another, then they should be able, as I say, we recognize there's some circumstances that may make it hard for organizations to register. then they could send us an email and we could then get into the details of why they are not registered and be able to advise them accordingly.
I think also some people have had difficulties with the link online where they have started filling out the information and then it's closed down. So maybe you want to explain the issues with applications and not to apply more than once.
Teresa, are you here? Yeah, I will ask Teresa to answer that because she's the one who is doing the back end with the system.
Yes, apologies. I was answering one of the live questions. On the live, the link should be working. We are asking the applicants not to register more than once, otherwise you will get an error message because you are duplicating the registration records. If that happens, please contact us on WhatWorks2 info email and I'll deactivate one of the registered emails. So when you register and all goes well, you will receive a code. You need to check the email you just used to register, enter that code, and that will take you, hopefully that will work, that will take you to the grants portal. Once you are there, please click on the live link on the funding window 2, and then complete the steps. We have just uploaded a grant management system self-registration guide. The Arabic translation is underway, so we should be able to also upload that Arabic translation of the grant management system today or tomorrow morning. Please do read that carefully because it will help you and it will guide you in your registration and then the completion of the concept note. One of the things that is happening is when you start your concept note, you are asked to complete the name of your concept note. Please be very succinct, just use maximum of 10 words to give a name of your concept note. Also, the start date of your grant cannot be before the 1st of October 2025. As this should work, and then it will take you to the template of the concept note. I hope this is helpful, but please, I urge you to read the Grant Management System Self-Registration Guide. Thank you.
Claudia, do you see other questions we may not have answered?
Yes, some questions about the definition of what it means to be a women's rights or women-led org, and one organization saying that they are a feminist organization working on VAWG, but they don't identify as a WR or WLO. So just some questions around what that means.
Sinead, do you want to come in here as you share who can apply and what we mean by women's rights?
Yes, and I think a point on this, if you are unclear, please do email us and we will look at whether you're registered or the type of organization you are, because what we really want to avoid is organizations spending time answering even a short concept note. So we do urge you, as you are right now, to ask us these questions and we will reply to you and look specifically at your case to check whether you are eligible. So in terms of our definition of a women's rights organization, to reiterate, it is led, majority led. So I saw another question earlier where somebody said we have, I think, all women on our staff except one man. That is majority led women, and it would be the same. What we're looking for is that there are the majority of women within a decision-making capacity in that organization. So that's to kind of answer that question. But essentially, if your organization is looking to promote and protect the rights of women and girls in all their diversities, then you would be classed as a women's rights organization. You can also self-identify as one and tell us why you think you do. The criteria is on all of the documentation when you apply. The definition is there, so you should be able to match against that but we do welcome you to give us more information as to why, you know, who you are and what your organisation is looking to do. Does that answer the question? I'm not sure who it was from answering.
I think that did, yes.
Okay.
And there's another question that's just come in about elaborating a little bit more on the interest in climate and also the interest in working with disabled women.
Mm-hmm. And shall I give a broad around eligibility, and then you can come in more on the technical aspect of climate? So, as you know, as Anne mentioned, there's the 3 priority areas. So we're looking to use this window to fund VAWG prevention in climate change, VAWG prevention in conflict-affected regions, VAWG prevention and technology-facilitated violence. Either just one of those, so you could have an idea in climate change and what is the intersection and what your idea will do to prevent the pathway of violence against women and girls within climate change. Or you could look for all 3. So you can have just one priority area that you're responding to. You could respond to a combination of 2 or all 3 if you manage to. So that's the sort of distinction in terms of the 3 priority areas that we're looking to fund. In terms of disability, we really want to support the leadership of organisations working with women with disabilities. So funding those organisations directly or in a partnership. If an organisation who is led by women with disabilities, working with women with disabilities, is applying, that is a commitment for FCDO funding. We are looking to essentially remove barriers to organisations led by women who are working with women with disabilities. That is a commitment. So we are strongly encouraging applications from those organisations, either working with, trying to look at populations around women with disabilities and combining that with VAWG prevention, or that are led by women with disabilities, which we have already within our What Works grantee. So it is a priority for What Works and for FCDO. And do you want to come in on that, or is that or whoever asked, please come in with follow up on that if that's not enough information. And I can just see in the chat, and before you do, could we apply for 2? So sorry if I wasn't clear. Your idea when you're applying on your concept note could be looking at both how you could prevent violence using technology facilitated violence interventions within climate crisis. But what you cannot do is apply twice. We can only accept applications you can only apply once for this funding. And the reason why we do that is to ensure that no organisation gets the monopoly. And, you know, like, especially because although we are looking to fund women's rights organisations in the lead or co-leading, if it's technology facilitated violence, we do allow for INGOs to apply if INGOs are applying with women's rights organisations. So that's why we say you can only apply once, so that it's fair and everybody gets the opportunity and we don't have a monopoly of INGOs or other organisations applying. Back to you, Anne.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I see a question from Hajar Mohammed about the institutional criteria required for funding organizations. Yes, you do need to be registered, and I see Teresa has also pasted the answer in the chat. You need registration. We'll ask you to submit audited accounts for at least the last 3 years. We are looking at having at least some level of capacity to implement programs. You need to have some institutional level policies, human resource, financial management policies, HR policies, You have capacity for monitoring and evaluation. So we do need a certain level of capacity for you to be able to receive this funding. Yes, I see a hand up, Nabila, coming.
Hello? Hello? Can you hear me? Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for that fruitful session. This is Nabil Al-Kumain from LMBO. It is National NGOs Women-Led Organization in Yemen. My question is about the proposals. How many proposals that you will be accepted?
Yeah, we will be accepting 6 concept notes for this round of funding, and each concept note is £500,000.
Okay, that's clear. Thank you so much.
Okay. Claudia, do you want to come in with the questions that you...
Yeah, there's still some questions and confusion about protracted crises versus active crises, and then questions around Yemen and whether or not Yemen would be defined as protracted or active, and also questions about Chad and, for example, projects that may take place in a refugee camp in Chad, servicing women who are fleeing from the conflict in Sudan and South Sudan.
Thank you. I would say, yeah, what WACS has considered in the past projects for people in refugee camps, and we would be able to support people within refugee camps. And again, the issue around protracted crisis or active conflict, I would say let people apply, and then we will review it based on the situation and the circumstance at that particular point in time, and within the context of that crisis, whether it's protracted or active, and make a determination.
Great, thank you. I think there was also some earlier questions around how we fund is, do we just fund one project per country? Would we support regional work, or do we only support work that is happening on a country basis or a local basis?
Thank you, Claudia. So in response to that, we don't dictate where people fund, whether people want to implement a project in one country or region. However, if you look at the amount of money involved, the question is, how much are you able to do with £500,000 in a multi-country intervention? So I think, and the reality actually, once people start writing these concept notes, that's when you actually, and budgeting, that's when you actually realize that you are only able to do so much within a certain sort of context and region and location. So we don't dictate to people. For instance, you could have a TFGBV, technology facilitated projects, that's multi-country because of the nature of the intervention you're proposing, but also because of the research intervention. We would, again, we would ask people to be to think through, to be thoughtful about these applications. And if they're going to be multi-country, then you have to be able to see with how much you're able to deliver within the budget limits that we have. So we don't restrict people to whether they want to apply in a country or on multi-country. But I think budget guidance would be the one people should follow more in terms of what's possible within the available funding.
And there's a question from Nora, and I know she's unable to use her microphone. So I'm going to read her question out. Her question is around the escalation of war and the airstrikes on Beirut and all over Lebanon. And she's asking around development projects and asking us not to ignore the current reality that if the war ends, projects will need to be focused on the displaced women and girls who won't all have homes to return to from the south of Lebanon. And her question to us is, can they develop a project that involves displaced and take into consideration the ongoing crisis?
Again, that's a difficult one. No hard and fast rules, because this is an active and really something that has recently sort of just erupted within Lebanon. So I think as you evaluate the RFP, the call for concept notes, and as the situation evolves, you can go ahead and submit, and then we will review and be able to advise at that particular point in time.
Yes. Thanks, Anne. And I think Morag, would you like to come in here also?
Yeah, thanks, Sinead, and thank you, Noor, for your comment there, which I saw in the chat. And I wanted to say, from a UK perspective, FCDO, it's not a question of either a development support to a development program or support to a humanitarian crisis. It is both. So while this month the UK announced an additional 10 million in aid to support people who have been displaced and are affected by the ongoing crisis in Lebanon, at the same time as focusing on that immediate humanitarian need, and within that, the need for protection services and GBV response services in particular. At the same time, we think it's important not to lose sight of the longer term development goals for some of the reasons that I set out in my introduction, because we see gender equality as vital for achieving these longer term goals of economic well-being, climate resilience, and stability. So our support to the What Works programme complements the support that we provide through humanitarian aid in the region. So I just wanted to reassure you that it's not a question of either or. Back to you, Sinead.
Thank you, Morag. That it's very helpful to clarify that, and maybe on top of that, at a kind of broader level, not speaking specifically about countries. Something that we would like to emphasize and have emphasized on our other funding windows on What Works is the fact that we are looking around prevention of violence against women and girls. Within the interventions that we support, there are response elements, but because there are other funding and other donors working to respond, to work in response and fund response services, we are looking around prevention. And I think, in terms of Noor's specific example, we are looking to support organisations working on prevention against women and girls, displaced women and girls in refugee camps, as a sort of broader rule. The actual specifics with ongoing geographies are a little bit more difficult to answer on a webinar like this. And again, that's why we really encourage you to get in touch with us directly, and then we can answer you very quickly and hopefully save you, Nora, and other people time around these applications. Yeah. Back to you in terms of
I see Radwa Foda is saying they have a question regarding Sudanese women's rights movements. Radwa, do you want to come in with your question?
Hi.
Mm-hmm.
I think my question got partially answered, but my question is about it's not about us as an organization as much as I see another organization eligible for this. My question is if the organization is a bunch, it's like an organization, the members of the organization are all around the diaspora during the well-known situation in Sudan. So would that make them eligible or not? This is one thing. They have been working for several years. And this is one of my questions, and the other question is related to the current situations in general in the region, is what happens if we, like I'm working from Egypt, what happens if the next day we became a war zone? Like you are, you constantly answered several questions related to this idea about what happens if we are currently in an active war zone, and then we became one. Does that mean that the fund is going to get terminated on spot or what? So these are my two questions. Thank you.
So if I understood you correctly, is if you get the funding and then there is war that breaks out, then what happens? Then in that case, in that case, then we will deal with the situation at that particular point in time. We are not likely to terminate the funding if you will already have secured it. However, what we are saying is that if there's an active conflict and war going on right now, and as both Morag and Sinead have explained, there's other funding pots from other sources that organizations could apply to. And because our program focuses on prevention within that whole continuum of prevention and response, and we also have studies, evaluations that are attached to these interventions, then we would prefer to work in protracted crises and not an active conflict. So I hope I have answered you. On the first question, I'm not sure I understood, because you're saying it's a group of women, and I don't know why they can't apply.
An organization.
It's an organization.
No, because they're working because they're in the diaspora.
Oh, in the diaspora.
So can an organization that is functioning from the diaspora, not so that they're not based currently in Sudan? I mean, who would be basically?
That would make it difficult, because then you would need to sort of be present in the location where you are implementing the intervention. At least you need to have some presence in the country where you're going to implement that intervention.
Okay, that's a little bit conflicting, because then Sudan would be exempted because it's an active war zone.
Well,
right?
Among the people working there, is there a local organization that can host your funds?
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. How are we doing with time, Becky?
We're on 23 minutes past, so about another 5 minutes or so until we should probably start to wrap up.
Just one final question, which I think is interesting, Anne, is about the TFGBV interventions. So understanding that applications can be led by actors from the digital rights or technology sector. So just confirming that those applications do not have to be led by a women's rights org and can be led by a digital rights focused organization.
Absolutely. That question is actually spot on. I've seen it. Yeah, for the TFGBV intervention, we recognize that as an emerging area of violence, maybe for women's rights organizations, the expertise and the experience of working on this issue may not be there. And so we are saying we are making an exception that TFGBV interventions can be led by actors from digital rights or tech groups in partnership though with a women rights organization. Any other burning one before we come towards the close? Digital, I see there is a follow-up question about digital rights. Preferably, look, the funding is for WROs based in these regions, so they would have to be based either in MENA, Sub-Saharan Africa. That is also the tech company, as well as Asia. Yeah. And I see there's one more question from Marwa Bain that they currently have CSSF funding, which is ending soon, and they did a consultation, able to continue with, again, absolutely, that's your call. If you think that you have interventions that are interesting, that fit the description of innovation that we described as an existing or a new idea that you think is transformative in terms of changing and shifting norms on violence prevention, feel free to apply.
And maybe just to follow up specifically on that one, to confirm that there would be a grant that will have a specific start date and end date and requirements that go along with that. So even though it's great that we would supplement the gap essentially that previous question was indicating, the What Works funding would be very separate and has its own reporting requirements, even though it's great to complement and looking for synergies. But it would be very much a specific grant with a start and end date and reporting to FCDO. Thanks. And
all right.
Social media. Is social media campaign activity applicable? I don't know if that's on the rights ones, but it could apply to all of them.
Yeah, I would say that I would ask the person to lead the guidance note because it describes the kind of activities we'll be funding. A social media campaign activity, if you think is an idea that could prevent violence, again, you need to explain and describe it and the innovation that you're proposing. So I would want us, in a way of moving us towards closing, to urge us all, and I think we have sent the link on the chat where you can apply for a grant, and we've kept sharing it. If you go to that, you'll find all the guidance notes, you'll find the application form, and you will find all the questions that we are asking people to answer in there, and to really thank everyone. But before I do that, Morag, I want to hand over to you to see whether you have anything else that you would want to say before we can close it.
Two things. One is I heard loud and clear questions around the crisis in the region and how we can best support women and girls and men and boys affected by the current conflict. And I just want to post in the chat the link to the Equality Fund Prepare grants, which the UK also funds. And these grants are specifically aimed to support grassroots women's rights organizations in preparing and responding to crisis. So please do look at the website. I'm sad to say that the recent call for grants closed this month, but if you subscribe to their newsletter, they will have future grant rounds. So please do look at that. And then in addition to that, only to say thank you very much to everybody who's attended and for all your thoughtful questions and engagement over an hour and a half, which is a chunk of your time, and to the What Works team for working through 100 and odd questions that I saw were answered. As you're aware, they're available, the address for ongoing support, www.2.info@rescue.org. It's on the finals slide in the deck that will be shared with you. Please do consider this opportunity if it aligns with your organization's goals. It's a fantastic opportunity to receive support over 3 years, a sizable award in terms of the grant. And there's a good lead-in time. We're looking for short concept notes in the first instance, but the actual projects won't begin until October 25, which means there's lots of time to collaborate and design and think about the evaluation as well, which ultimately will help contribute to the global evidence base on what works to prevent violence against women and girls. I will stop there and thank everybody very much for joining today. Back to you, Anne.
Thank you, Morag. And just to, in conclusion, to say that we have your registration details. When you registered for the webinar, we will share these materials both in English and in Arabic. I saw questions about whether we will share the presentations. We will be able to share it with them and resend the link for to the website for application. And once again, sincere appreciation for spending these 1.5 hours with us. And we also have an FAQ document in the materials, frequently asked questions, and you can also keep sending us questions. We will actively keep monitoring the email to be sure we are giving people responses in a timely manner. Thank you very much, colleagues and everyone else, and Morag, for your time and for helping us put together this event.
You're welcome. Goodbye, everybody. Have a good week.
Bye. Thanks to our interpreters too.